Hello everybody, and welcome back to some random guy on the internet rambles on and on about a horror movie he just watched. For those new on my channel, this isn't my typical review series. Whenever I watch a newer horror movie, something that just came out in theaters, I like to do what's called a Ramble review. I don't like to take any notes, I don't like to do any research, I just like to give my fresh thoughts on the movie that I just saw. And it can get a little rambly and babbly at certain points, but people seem to like that, so that's why I do it. So yes, I just saw the 2022 Scream movie, the requel or sequel remake or whatever the hell people are calling it nowadays. So for this review, I'm just going to refer to it as Scream 2022. But yes, I went to go see the movie with my friend Keith. I had to invite him along. He's a huge Scream fan, and I knew I couldn't watch this movie without him. So the original Scream is a very important movie to me, and I was intrigued by this new Scream movie because it was the first movie not directed by Wes Craven, rest in peace. But I was intrigued because it was directed by the group Radio Silence, and they're the ones who did the movie Ready or Not, which I saw when it came out in 2019, loved it, and I thought we would be in good hands with them doing Scream, because Ready or Not had a good balance of comedy and tension. And the Scream movies, at least the first one, had a perfect balance of humor and suspense and horror. So I was hoping that going into this they would find that balance, and overall, I think they did. So with Scream 2022, overall, I kinda loved this movie. And Keith felt the same way. We both were very satisfied with this movie. We both enjoyed it very much. But both he and I have issues with the movie. I don't know if he has the same issues as I do. I know he has similar issues to me on certain things. But overall, I did have some problems with this movie, but overall, I thought this was a damn good Scream movie. And a few asterisks after that. This is a movie that I think Scream fans will love. If you are a fan of the franchise, you will enjoy this movie. Newcomers to the franchise, I don't know if they'll like this movie as much if they're not familiar with the other movies in the series. People will enjoy this, but I think you'll enjoy it so much more if you're a Scream fan. And like I said, I do have some problems with this movie, and I'll talk about that a little later, because in order to talk about those issues, I'm gonna have to talk spoilers. So let me give you my overall thoughts right now before we get into that, and I'll let you know when we're getting into spoilers. So we'll just keep an eye out for that. So with all these sequel remakes or remake sequels or requels or whatever the hell people are calling them now, I think this is the best one of those so far. Because, you know, you had Halloween, you had Halloween Kills, you had the new Candyman. I think in terms of these horror requels, I think Scream handled this the best. With a lot of sort of reboot sequels that we get nowadays, they are heavily dependent on nostalgia. They are dependent on references to older movies in the franchise. You saw that with Halloween, you saw it with Halloween Kills, you saw it with the new Candyman. Not only with horror, you see it in the new Star Wars movies, and you see it in the new Jurassic World movies. And Scream has the same thing. It banks on nostalgia for the older movies. But I think Scream 2022 did it best. And the main reason why I think it works here is because the Scream franchise has always been about references. It's always been about, you know, referencing horror movies and having all these different references to horror movies. So it didn't stick out as much in Scream 2022 because the series has always been about that. But of course they do, you know, bank on nostalgia for the earlier movies in the series, because we have to accept the fact that we live in a new era of exploitation cinema. Now, I'm a fan of exploitation movies, grindhouse movies, B-movies, and the thing about exploitation movies, especially the ones that came out through the 60s to the early 80s, exploitation movies were all about exploiting what the audience wanted to see. You know, slasher movies, they exploited blood, people having sex and then getting killed. Kung fu movies, they exploited hand-to-hand combat. Car-sploitation movies, they exploited cars going fast, doing stunts, and getting into car crashes. And then of course, you had blaxploitation movies, and what did that exploit? It exploited what black audiences wanted to see. They wanted to see more movies with African-American main characters. And so, boom, blaxploitation. And we live in this modern era of exploitation movies, which I like to call nostalgia-sploitation. They're exploiting nostalgia. Star Wars movies did it, the Jurassic World movies did it, the Disney remakes are doing it, and these various horror requels, yeah, it's nostalgia-sploitation. And Scream 2022 handled its nostalgia-sploitation in an interesting way. I mean, yes, it does have the callbacks to the previous movies. This character is related to this character from the original. You have the legacy characters coming back. You know, Neve Campbell comes back, Courteney Cox comes back, David Arquette comes back, and they reprise their roles as the characters that we know and love from the original. The main way it banked on nostalgia from the original movies, they did it in a creative way. The killer in this, like all the killers in the Scream franchise, they're always, you know, referencing horror movies. But the killer, or killers, I know that's a minor spoiler, there are 2 killers in this movie, but the majority of the Scream movies have 2 killers, so I don't consider that really a spoiler because it's kind of par for the course for these movies. But anyway, the killers in this movie are less referencing horror movies and more referencing the Stab franchise. In the Scream movies, after the first movie, for the rest of the series, there's this horror series called Stab, which was based on the events of the Scream movies. And so you have these people who are fans of the Stab series, which is essentially the Scream movies in this universe. And that's how they handle it here. The killer is a fan of the Stab franchise, so his references are all towards the Stab series. The Scream movies have always been about commenting on the state of horror when that movie came out, poking fun at the horror genre, and celebrating it. The first Scream movie balanced that out perfectly, you know, commenting on the horror genre, making fun of the horror genre, and celebrating the horror genre all at the same time. It found a perfect balance between those 3 things. I personally think that Scream 2 also did that very well. I'm a Scream 2 apologist. I know, yeah, the movie has problems. I'll be the first one to admit that. A lot of people have issues with Scream 2, and those issues are valid. But Scream 2 has a lot of elements that make it my favorite sequel in the franchise. So yeah, I'm a Scream apologist. But I thought that Scream and Scream 2 captured those, you know, the commentary, the humor, and the celebration of the horror genre very well. And that's been a little muddled in the movies that followed. Scream 2022, it captures the humor, it captures the celebration of the horror genre, but it gets a little muddled in its commentary, I think. And I'll talk about that a little later. I'm going to talk about the opening scene a little, which you can call minor spoilers, but it's in the trailer and it's not spoiling that much. So you have an opening scene where someone is home alone and they get a call from the killer, much like the first one. They even do a thing where the person on the phone pulls out a knife as they mention their favorite horror movie, just like in the first one. I kind of rolled my eyes to that, but it wasn't that big a deal. So the killer is asking questions about the Stab franchise, and this character is talking about how she likes modern horror and she likes elevated horror. She says her favorite movie is The Babadook, and she mentions elevated horror like Hereditary, Midsummer, The Witch, and various other movies like that. And that bugged me a little bit because, yes, elevated horror is a thing, but elevated horror has existed before these movies. It's existed before The Babadook. It's existed before The Witch. It's existed before Midsummer. And I wish they mentioned that. I wish the killer mentioned that in this little conversation. Because you have the original Wicker Man from 1973, and in many ways that could be considered elevated horror. It's a horror musical. It's shot very nicely in this very beautiful way. And yes, Midsommar, or Midsummer, however you want to pronounce that, a lot of people love that movie, but it was heavily inspired by The Wicker Man. Midsummer would not exist without The Wicker Man. And you could call The Wicker Man elevated horror. The Shining, you could definitely call The Shining elevated horror. Silence of the Lambs, I mean, you could definitely call Silence of the Lambs elevated horror. So elevated horror has existed before all these movies, and I just wish that was mentioned. There is like this commentary on gatekeeping in the horror genre. But for me, it's also a commentary on... I don't think it necessarily was trying to comment on this, but I think, you know, it did comment on this, and I think it would have been better if that was the focus, if they focused on commenting on this. How people love horror movies that they grow up with. You know, you see it online a lot whenever someone is doing a list of their favorite horror movies, and they don't have older horror movies on the list. You see horror fans say, okay, why, how could you not have Halloween on the list? How could you not have Psycho on the list? How could you not have The Shining on your list? And you look at it, it's because these people didn't grow up with those movies. They grew up with these newer movies. And of course you are going to gravitate towards the movies you grew up with. You know, like, okay, I grew up with 80s horror movies, 90s horror movies, 70s horror movies, so of course I'm going to love those genres. Younger people grow up with these newer horror movies. They grow up with The Babadook, they grow up with It Follows, they grow up with Hereditary. And of course, so yeah, they grow up with these movies, so of course they're going to gravitate towards these movies. Because I've always thought that people should embrace the horror genre as a whole. Embrace the newer movies and the older movies. Love what you want, but embrace the genre as a whole, and I wish the new Scream commented on that a little more. Now, we have the killer in Scream 2022, and I loved this killer, or killers, to an extent in here. I mean, I love the killers, but again, asterisks after that. Every time it's the Scream killer, every time it's Ghostface, I loved it. I thought it was creepy, I thought it was well shot, I thought the kills were brutal. After it's revealed who the killers are, I liked it to an extent, but I had issues with it. Again, I'll get more into that during spoilers. But as it stands, with the ghost-faced killer in this movie, when the person is Ghostface, it's fantastic. And the kills are so good. I'd say these are the best kills since the first movie. Because, okay, you look at the first movie, it had some good kills, and there was a punch to the kills in the first movie. You had a punch to the kills in the second movie. Not all the kills in the second movie, but there was a punch to a few of the kills in the second movie. The third movie, I don't think any of the kills had that punch. The fourth movie is considered the goriest movie in the franchise, but again, it didn't feel like the kills had that punch. This one, the kills have the punch. They are gorier than the kills in the first movie, but they're handled just as good as the kills in the first movie, and that's because of proper build-up to each kill. Except for one. There's one kill in the new Scream that I don't think was built up to properly, because... Okay, this isn't really a spoiler, so I'm going to say it. It was building up to what it felt like was going to be some kind of jump scare, or the killer reveal, and then they didn't do it. So it was like building up to that, and then, oh, okay, the killer didn't really show up there, but they did that too much, to the point where it got annoying. It's like, okay, this guy opens a door, and when he closes the door, you think the killer's going to be there, but the killer's not there. So then he goes somewhere else, and it's building up, oh, the killer's going to be here, and then the killer's not there. And then they do it again, oh, the killer's going to be here, and the killer's not there, and you're just sitting there like, okay, get to the point. This isn't funny, it's getting annoying. But the rest of the kills had proper build-up to them, just like in the original Scream. The original Scream had such good build-up to each of the kills, to every kill in Scream, and I always say the build-up to the kill is just as important as the kill itself. The characters overall work, the main characters. The legacy characters, Sidney Prescott, Gale Weathers, Dewey, they're all great because, okay, we grew up with these characters, of course they're going to be great. The new cast of characters, the new victims for Ghostface, if you will, they all do a good job for the most part. The main character, Sam, I had some issues with her. Here's a minor spoiler here, but it is what gets the plot going, so I won't say spoiler alert fully here, but I do have to clarify. Sam is a girl who moved out of Woodsboro years ago, and now I think she's like 25 years old now. And she goes back to Woodsboro after she finds out that her sister was attacked. Her sister Tara was the girl in the opening girl who's essentially in the Drew Barrymore role, where Ghostface is calling and harassing her and then eventually attacks her. But in this situation, she lives. And that blew me away. Yes, that's a minor spoiler, and I do apologize for that, but I have to say this in order to get to a very important point here that I think needs to be said. She lives and gets into the hospital, which is why Sam comes back to Woodsboro. Now, the girl who plays Tara, Sam's little sister, Jenna Ortega, I think that's her name, my friend Keith and I both agreed that she was the best part of this movie. She was the best actor in the movie, and she was the best character in the movie. Completely stealing the show from everybody, even the killers. She was fantastic. The actress playing Sam was Melissa Barrera, and I don't want to be too hard on her because she's clearly putting in effort, she's clearly trying, but I had problems with her performance. And as I was watching the movie, I was trying to figure out what it was, and I think I figured out my issues with her performance. She feels like she's right out of a soap opera. I mean, her acting feels like soap opera acting. And again, I don't want to be too hard on her for that because the Scream movies have always had that a slight soap opera-esque quality to them. Yeah, there was a slight soap opera-y flair to the acting, a slight soap opera-y flair to the story, but the other Scream movies were able to find that perfect balance where, yeah, it has a slight soap opera feel to it, but it doesn't feel like a soap opera. The acting doesn't feel like soap opera acting. It's that perfect balance. And for the most part, the characters in Scream 2022 are able to find that balance, except for Sam. I mean, she does feel like she's in a soap opera, and I think if, she just worked on her performance a little, if the directors worked on her performance a little more, it could have been better. Again, I don't want to fault her for that, because she is clearly trying. It's just, it feels too much like it's coming out of a soap opera. The minute I figured this out was during this scene where Sam is talking to Tara in the hospital. And you see the contrasts between their performance. Sam is confessing something to Tara, and Tara is just lying in the hospital bed. She's been stabbed multiple times, limbs have been broken, so she can't do much. Tara does not have a lot of dialogue in this scene. Sam has the majority of the dialogue, and I love a good monologue. And this is a good monologue if the performance was a little better. So you see Melissa Barrera as Sam and Jenna Ortega as Tara, and you see these two performances. You have Jenna, who is lying in a hospital bed. She doesn't have a lot of dialogue. The majority of her acting is with her face. She's mostly doing face acting. And then you have Melissa playing Sam, who is giving this long, hard-hitting monologue. And you have Tara acting circles around Sam. You have this girl lying in a hospital bed, doing face acting, not talking that much, and acting circles around the person who has the monologue. That was incredible to me, and that's when I realized the issues I had with the Sam character. And now, to tell you what else I liked and the issues I had with Scream 2022, I'm gonna have to get into spoilers, so that's a spoiler alert, spoiler alert. Stick around if you've seen Scream 2022. If you haven't, go watch it. I do think it's worth watching, especially if you're a Scream fan. But this is your last warning. We're getting into spoilers here, so no turning back now. And I'm gonna say this, spoilers for the rest of the Scream movies as well, because I do have to talk about some of the old movies in order to talk about the new movie. So, spoiler alert for those as well. Getting that out of the way. So one of the reasons I liked Scream 2022 is one of the same reasons why I liked Scream 2. In Scream 2, they killed off a well-loved character, Randy. Everyone loved Randy from the first Scream, and they had the balls to kill him in this movie. Scream 3, they didn't have the balls to kill any of the legacy characters. Same thing with Scream 4, but Scream 2022, they kill Dewey. They kill Dewey in this movie, and he is given a brutal death. But here's the thing with me. When it comes to a series, or a sequel, remake, or whatever, killing off a legacy character, killing off a loved legacy character that has a fan base, that has a well-established story, I think if you're going to do that, if you're going to kill off a character like this, they need to go out in a blaze of glory. It needs to be their ultimate moment of badass. That's why I've had issues with the way other movies have killed off their legacy characters. Because it's like, no, if you're going to kill them off, let them go out in a blaze of glory. I have no problem with killing off legacy characters, but if you're going to do it, make sure it's their ultimate moment of badass. And that's how it was with Dewey. He goes in to protect Tara, shoots the Ghostface killer a bunch of times, and then as they're leaving, he realizes, wait, you have to shoot him in the head, so he's going back to finish them off. He's already had this big, badass moment. And he goes out swinging. I mean, he goes out in a brutal way, but he does go out swinging. And I appreciate that. Killing off a legacy character in a proper way, a way that has the impact, and letting them go out in a blaze of glory. And now, my biggest issue with this movie is the killer reveal. Not so much the killer reveal, but, again, the motivation of the killer. And I'm gonna say something here. I accidentally ruined the killer reveal for myself. Not because I gave anything away, but because the way I thought the movie was going, I thought would have been better than where the movie went. And I know that's probably my ego. I'm sounding like an egomaniac here, and I apologize. I swear to God, I'm not doing this out of an ego thing. I just thought this would have been a better way for it to go. Right away, when Sam gets to the hospital, we see this character, Amber, sitting on Tara's bed. And right away, my friend Keith and I knew she was the killer. As soon as we saw her, we're like, yeah, she did it. But that's not a big deal, okay? It was like we learned her motivation. And we knew there was going to be two killers, because we've seen the other movies. It's like there's a very good chance there's going to be two killers in here, or maybe three. But no, it was two killers. First thing, I thought it was going to be revealed that Amber was in love with Tara. Because you think about it, Tara did not die. She was attacked in the beginning of the movie, but she didn't die. And I thought, and Keith thought this too, we both thought that it was going to be revealed that Amber was in love with Tara. And this would make sense later on in the movie, because it does seem like Amber has issues with Sam. And before we get into that, I also have to reveal, it's revealed that Sam is the daughter of Billy from the first Scream. You find out that he had another girlfriend before, Sidney Prescott, and that girlfriend got pregnant and then gave birth to Sam. And I'm going to get into that a little more in a minute, but let's focus on that. So it's revealed that Sam is the daughter of Billy Loomis, and the killers are using that to an extent. They're going to basically frame Sam for these killings because she was the daughter of Billy Loomis. And again, that's why I thought it was going to be revealed that Amber was in love with Tara. Because think about it, okay, that would explain why Tara was not killed at the beginning, and it would make sense why Amber wanted to hurt Sam, because in a way she abandoned her sister, and I think that would have been a much more interesting dynamic than where the movie goes. So yeah, I think Amber should have been in love with Tara, and that should have been her motivation to want to hurt Sam and want to do this, because she cared about Tara and hated the fact that she was hurt by Sam leaving. That would have been a little more complex. And then, who I thought the second killer was going to be, I thought it was going to be revealed that the second killer was going to be Sam and Tara's father. Not Billy. Not Billy. I thought it was going to be Sam's non-biological father. Because during that scene I told you about in the hospital, where Sam is revealing a secret to Tara, she's revealing that she's Billy Loomis's daughter. And she's talking about how she found this out in a diary and then confronted her mother about it. And her father ended up hearing what happened and then left, abandoned the family, because she found out that Sam was Billy Loomis's daughter. So I thought he was going to be the second killer. He's coming back to get revenge on Sam and Woodsboro, essentially, for ruining his family. I thought it was going to be revealed that he got in contact with Amber, revealed this secret, and then Amber found a way to get revenge on Sam, and then they were going to work together to basically frame Sam and then kill her off and make her look like she's the guilty one. I thought that would have been much better. But what ends up happening is it's revealed that the second character is Sam's boyfriend, who was a good character. He was fun, it was all that, and okay, that's in line with the first one. But what killed this for me was the reveal of the motivation. It would have been so much better if Amber was in love with Tara, if Sam's father was the second killer, because it's revealed that Amber and Sam's boyfriend are Stab movie fans. They're huge fans of the Stab series, but they think that the series isn't what it used to be, and that's why they're killing people, because they want to make sure new Stab movies can be made that are closer to the original. This is really fucking stupid. I thought that was the dumbest motivation humanly possible. It's just like, okay, so you're killing people because you're fans of a movie. Okay, I'll admit, okay, Billy and Stu were horror movie fans, and they were killing people because they wanted to make more movies and become famous in a way. But here's the thing. Billy had not only that as his motivation. He didn't just have the fact that he was a horror fan as his motivation. Sidney's mom slept with Billy's father, resulting in Billy's mother abandoning him. And that's what caused this whole thing to get into motion. So there's other motivation there. You look at Scream 2. Yes, you had this one guy who just wanted to be a killer, and the only reason he became a killer was because of script leaks, but anyway, it's revealed that the second killer is Billy's mother. So Billy's mother is the second killer in Scream 2, and you understand her motivation. She wants revenge on Sidney for killing her son. In the third movie, it's revealed that Sidney had a long-lost half-brother, and he ends up being the killer. But again, there's some motivation there. I think it's stupid, but there was motivation there. The fourth movie is where the motivation starts falling apart. Sidney's cousin wants to be famous, so she and a friend become the new Scream killers, or whatever. And then you have this one, where they're fans of the Stab movies, and they want the Stab movies to be what they used to be, so they're killing people so that they'll get classic Stab movies again. And as I said, that is fucking stupid. You could have given these killers much deeper motivation if you made Amber in love with Tara. Hell, you know, you could have given better motivation to the boyfriend, or hell, have the boyfriend still be crazy, but still give Amber that deeper motivation. But nope, they're disgruntled horror movie fans, and that's it. But overall, I think they handled the legacy characters properly. I think the new characters were mostly good. Tara absolutely kicked ass. The kills were good. The killers were good until they were revealed. But it worked. I mean, it does work as a Scream sequel, and I think it's worth watching for Scream fans. I'm not gonna give a rating for this movie because, again, I just saw it, and I never like really giving a rating for movies I just saw, because my feelings could change after a while. You know, I could end up liking the movie more. I might end up liking the movie less. But, you know, I mean, I don't feel right giving a rating to a movie that I just saw in the theaters, because I want it to sit with me a little longer before I give it a rating. But all in all, I liked the new Scream movie. and I think if you're a fan of the Scream franchise, you will like it too. So, that's about it. Thank you for joining me on this Ramble review of Scream 2022. Leave in a comment down below, what did you think of the new Scream? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was okay? Let me know your favorite motivation for a killer in a horror movie. And I'm not talking about something like Michael Myers where he has no motivation. I mean, yes, having no motivation can work. But your favorite killer that has a motivation, what is your favorite motivation in that regards? And on that note, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for continuing to support this channel. And until next time, this is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.